All right, so last week we talked about, we've been talking about how to experience the Lord in the middle of your mess. Not really just your mess, just your life, about overcoming. And he's just been talking to me a lot about the difference between surviving and overcoming. A lot. And I think that Christians waste a lot of Jesus because they're trying to survive instead of tapping into him so that they can overcome. And I don't mean waste like to produce shame. It's just that you don't know that you can have more than you thought you could have. Maybe. Or maybe you've not been taught how to do that. I'm not sure. But so the Lord has really been pressing me about overcoming. And then we talked about, do you remember the picture of the squirrel? Mm-hmm. Chuck, I've just had you turn everything off because there were some people who weren't. Maybe can you just turn on one?
Maybe imagine a squirrel at the end of a branch.
Flying. Does that mean no?
Can you draw one?
You know, that's been with me always, like that scenario.
Are you getting tired or something there, buddy? Okay.
He's like, I'm going to sketch it out on the board.
Actually, he probably could do it better. Anyway, so just, and we've been talking about trust. I don't know how many of you were here. We talked about high trust. We talked about when you have, I can always do this right. When you have high trust, this equals high speed and low cost. And then when you have low trust, then you have slow speed and high cost. And the reason I keep going back over this, like the third week now that we've done this, is because I want you to see this is largely what's happening in your relationships, good or bad, but this is also largely what's happening in our relationship with the Lord. Because the more that we trust in him, the faster things can move, and the less the cost is to us emotionally, financially, really in every way. Because one of the things that the Lord's really been pressing me about this is we already have, we've talked about this for years now, we already have the favor of God. We already have that. How much favor of God do we have? 100%. We have 100% of it. But as I've been just studying and working through some different things, Chuck, let me see if I can find a different.
Hey, Frank.
Thanks, man. We already have 100% favor of the God, and sometimes I'm saying that. This is the picture. Well, let me just get this. Thanks, honey, for doing that. Talk about high trust, low trust, right? Mm-hmm. This is some serious high trust. And if you've ever watched a squirrel, they have high trust, they have high speed, and for the most part, they have low cost. You see an occasional dead squirrel, but for the most part, it's pretty good. But I'll retell this story quickly. The Lord just gave me this picture, asked me to watch this squirrel. What's the point of the squirrel? God, I don't get it. I'm tired. Can you just tell me what we're talking about? And so the Lord really, over the next several days, there was the picture. I watched the squirrel in the tree, and I really sensed from the Spirit, did you get it? No, I didn't get it. So over the next several days, he kept coming back to that picture about the squirrel has to consciously come down to the absolute weakest point of the tree, and it either has to hang there, which it cannot do because the weight of the tree won't hold it. So it either has to go back to the place that it came from, fall, or it has to jump. Those are its only three choices. But instinctively, the squirrel already knows that you come down to the weakest point and you jump, and you don't go immediately into strength because you're still jumping from one weak branch to another weak branch. You know what I'm saying? It's not jumping to the trunk. It's jumping, and when it jumps on this branch, you feel like, oh, I've made another mistake because the limb is given away with you. But then it's actually going back into the depth and the strength of the tree, going from strength to strength. So I don't know if that speaks to you, but that speaks to me. Because the Lord keeps telling me, he's continuing to come back going, you're going to have to jump. Sooner or later, you've got to jump. And you got to decide. And so then he starts coming back and talking about, why are you not jumping? Oh, well, I'm not really really sure how it's going to end up. And so there's a real pressing in, do we know how much of God that we have? And the phrase that I heard, I guess it was yesterday, is that the favor of God is available, but it's not automatic. And I thought that was a worthy phrase. It's available, but it's not automatic. Because I think that if you look in Scripture, this automatic is an invitation to us. Because you know as well as I do that God could just like snap His finger and the whole world could be changed in a moment. Right? Right. He has that kind of power. But there's an invitation to us to participate so that we're changed, so that we can see Him differently. Because you know as well as I do, I can either go fix my kids' problems or I can teach my children how to fix their problems, and now they love me better and they feel better about themselves, right? That's the reason we even get to experience parenting and all kinds of mentoring relationships, because it teaches us about God and our very own DNA. So, for this idea right here, what I want you to take away from this is you have all of God that you could need in your life. The question is are you pressing for it? Are you pulling it? Are you jumping? Are you going after it? Did anybody else have this sensation in the song where it said, I'm going to come after you. I'm coming after you. Did anybody get that line in the song?
I'm not going to give up.
I'm going to come after you and I'm not giving it. There's 2 lines. So I noticed I first was singing this way. I'm coming after you and I'm not going to give up. But did anybody else feel the shift? He's going, I'm coming after you and I'm not going to give up. Because I felt that in this room very strongly, is that we think that we're trying to get to Him and going, relax, He's coming after you. And He's not going to give up. So you can throw up all the radars that you want and all the smoke screens and all the oil slicks, everything's trying to make it hard for Him, but it's not hard for Him and He's not going to give up. It's like He's going, I'm coming after you. Because He knows you need this. He knows you need what you have that you won't receive. See, He's not saying you can't have it. He's saying, will you ask? Will you receive it from me? Will you pull on me and get the favor that you need? I just think that's beautiful. I love that. So, this, I'm just going to keep giving you this because if you will write this down, we actually have this on our mirror at home because we're having to sit in it. Because we all know this experience. At least maybe y'all don't. I know this experience where there's been low trust and everything is slowed down and it's cost me 10 times more and it's been so hard. But I've also felt there's like this favor of things where it just, a friend of mine said it was as if she was a boat, a ship, and the Holy Spirit was the wind in her sails and she was just being pushed along at a pace. That's what that makes me think of. Not that there's not trouble, not that there's not storms, it's that there is something that's based on our connection to God. And that is the most important thing you can work on, our connection. Your connection with God is the most important thing you can work on. So, trust, 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 trust. And He's going to give you tons and tons of opportunities to succeed and fail. And He's not going to get mad at you about it. He's just going to keep giving you lots of opportunities. Now, I want to give you 2 things. Are you done with this? Can I erase this? I want to give you 2 things. And I'm actually going to probably have Mr. Spicker come up to you some of this. I have Chuck is my R&D department, and so he will read something and he'll talk about it at 10 o'clock at night, and I go, that's great, honey, can I go to bed now? And then the Holy Spirit will not shut up about it. So then I'll have to go back to the director. Do you remember I was half asleep and you were talking about, and he'll go, yeah, I go, I need to hear that again. So I'm going to give you my version of what Chuck has told me. And then you jump in and correct, because you know how sometimes I tell you that your shirt is blue, but then the Lord tells you it's not just blue, it's teal. So yeah, you go with what He says, right? So some of this is what's happened for me. So in your life, we have this thing we call a structural conflict. Chuck, I don't remember what the little picture's supposed to be here.
A little person with a rubber band connecting them to either end. Yep.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Sitting
so
in the middle.
Make a little man.
No. Little man's in the middle.
Little man's in the middle. Okay, that could be awkward. Okay, little man in the middle. And then what? little girl. Let's make this a little girl just to be safe. And then there's a little girl.
Yeah, it's women getting real. Why not? Why wouldn't it be a woman?
Okay, so, and then what's a dot here and a dot here? Right.
Sure.
Correct it if it's not right.
It
You
looks
drew it
great.
for me last week and I just kind of forgot it. So, now
Maybe a
listen to me carefully.
red and blue marker maybe might be helpful. Like a rubber band going to one end to the other end.
So sometimes in our life, we have this sensation of being pulled in opposite directions. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? And I don't even know that this author is a believer. It doesn't really matter if it's all truth, it's God's truth. But he's given this picture about we believe one thing, we want another thing, and we feel like they're at war with each other. Perfect example, I want to be in shape, I want to eat whatever I want to eat, and so these things pull. I work out for a couple of weeks, and I watch what I'm doing, and so this is pulling this way because I'm pulling toward my goal, right? But what happens to this rubber band when I'm pulling toward that goal? What happens when you have two rubber bands pulling against each other? You can just feel the tension. So you're doing that and you're going, and I really want a milkshake. And so then you find this tension pulling back and forth. And so now let's think about practical things. I want to have a good marriage. And I want to be right. And I want to not forgive. These are competing goals. Because you do something nice, and then he pisses you off, and you're going, and you feel this tension back and forth. I want to have a good marriage. I want to have enough money, but I want to have credit cards and spend whatever I want. I don't want to be on the budget. I want to be on the budget. I don't want to be on budget. I want to be, with food. I want to be healthy. I want to be in charge. Are you getting the picture?
Mm-hmm.
This tension of how it goes back and forth. You can even go so far as, I want to love God, but I don't want to listen to him. I don't want to listen and do what he says.
Is there always a good and bad, or are there sometimes two good things that are in conflict?
That's a great question. I guess there could be.
I guess there could be two things that are
But
competing against each other.
Anytime, they could both be great things because it's important for a person to eat, right? And it's important for a person to be healthy and be in shape. So the idea is that the goals that exist in structural conflict are mutually exclusive.
Gotcha.
They
That's
would
right.
cancel one another out.
The goals are mutually exclusive, that you can't have both of them.
Gotcha.
One cancels out the other. So, I would say, yes, there can be two good goals because I can think about, even in my own work, I have mutually exclusive goals.
Yeah.
I want to meet with people and I want to write. We can't have both of those at the same time.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
both
yeah,
of
yeah.
those are good, but they're
But they're
conflict.
conflicting.
Do you have a question?
Well, you just said something and I wrote down half of it. We believe one thing, but what was the other part? We believe one thing, but we won't let
But
ourselves,
we want another thing.
but we won't know.
Well, here's the
You
thing.
said, but we won't let ourselves something the other. It's about God. We believe one thing, but
Well, we love God. Are you going to?
We don't want to listen to what he says.
okay.
Is that what it is?
Sorry, I don't have it. I'm
This
sorry.
was the very beginning before you wrote any of that.
So, but let's just keep going back to it. So the idea is that here's the problem with this picture is you believe both these things. But they're in tension. They're fighting against each other. They're warring, actually, even so far as they are warring against each other. And you can tell when you know this tension. You may not have ever called it this rubber band effect, but you know what that feels like to be making progress and then it just sweeps you back. And then you go over here and then it just sweeps you back because there's just this structural conflict. The two goals are in conflict with one another. Is there anything else you want to add that I've left out that you can think of?
The only thing that I would talk about would be maybe structure, like the idea of path of least resistance with water.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Like what structural means
that's
there.
huge. So what structure means here is that, let's say that you have a riverbed, okay? And this water is going to flow where the riverbed is. I didn't draw that, but it's going to flow. Water's going to flow in the riverbed. Yes?
the rubber band idea, is it basically the either living to please the sinful nature or living to please the spirit kind of thing?
No, I don't think so.
No, not necessarily.
I don't think it has to be a good or bad thing necessarily, like inherently, like spiritually. I just think it's the tension of having wanting two opposing things. Okay? So the way we work is water flows through least resistance. Have you ever seen water flow? It goes the easiest place it can flow. Do you know what I'm talking about when it rains? Like I live, my house is slanted, and so water comes flooding down this part of my field to the side of my house, and it goes wherever it wants, and it goes the easiest, least obstacle place. It's not going to go up over this and around this tree. It goes the easiest slot all the way down the hill. Does that make sense? Water does that. We do that. Our tendencies, our behaviors, our thinkings do this. Follows the path of least resistance. And then we read a couple of books, we read a couple of scriptures, and we're going, I'm going to change. Right? Path of least resistance, and then I'm going to change. And then we keep trying to do something different, but we've never changed the riverbed. Because you have to change the structure so that the water can flow down a different path. You have to change the structure of how you're doing something so that the water can flow with least resistance. Often our change is so complicated. That's the reason we can't maintain anything. That's the reason we can't do anything, because we made it so hard for the water to find its way down the hill. Y'all still tracking? Everybody okay with me? You got what I'm saying?
So instead of going down the path of the least resistance, we're fighting against.
Keep going. Tell me a question.
We're fighting against basically fighting against our nature that wants to go the same path we've always gone.
We're fighting against the path. We're fighting against the chosen path. And when we're trying to do in this, yes, Chuck?
So, Lydia, maybe one way to look at it is we would say...
Please come up.
No, it's fine for right now. But we would say, imagine a spot to the left of where the river is drawn now, anywhere out to the left. So we would say, we want the river to flow there. This is where we want the river to flow. But the reality of it is that the structures of our life are designed to get the water to the other place. And so our life flows in a way where it naturally goes there. And you can't just, to make a change, it's a structural change. I have to alter how I'm looking at my life and what I want. Like, in other words, if I say I want oneness in my marriage, but I'm operating in a structural conflict of oneness in my marriage and profound selfishness that swing each other back and forth, I can talk all day long about wanting a different result in my marriage, but my structure is designed to keep me oscillating and keep me in conflict instead of building a dam, rerouting that river, making that structure different so that the path of least resistance, the obvious thing, becomes oneness. It's kind of...
So it's not fighting upstream, it's rerouting the stream.
It's rerouting.
Gotcha.
You're rebuilding, reconstructing. You're reconstructing so that what you want actually has a chance of success. You can't just wish it, and you can't just make this little tiny mark here, because it's going to go in the structures that you've already set up. So this is like structural conflict. I'm just trying to get you to get this idea. Be aware of the tensions that you have. Be ruthlessly honest about the conflict. You want two things that both of them can't happen, okay? And then I want you to get the concept of we don't like to think about this, but when Chuck started telling me about this is exactly what Jesus did in my life. How about yours? Because left to my own devices, I could say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I would have stayed right on the same course I was on. So the Lord is going to go, we're just going to blow this up. We're just going to blow it all to pieces. Okay? And so now the water had a way to go in a different direction. I think about what you're doing. You are changing the structure. Because you would just keep going down the same path, right? And so you have consciously changed the structure.
You know what, that's a great point. So in that context, it's kind of like sitting in front of Cracker Barrel in a rocking chair, and you're just sitting there. Structural conflict just has you rocking in the chair, and you decide, I don't want to be at Cracker Barrel anymore. I want to go eat at Macaroni Grill. Well, that rocking chair, you can't necessarily put wheels on it, motorize it, whatever else. It's like not solving the problem of rocking, but creating something completely different. I'm going to go get in a car and drive to Macaroni Grill, which is basically you unseated that path of least resistance and went, I'm going to blow up this structure and I'm going to create something entirely new based on where I want to be.
I had forgotten that, Chuck. Thank you so much. So structural conflict is like a rocking chair. And so we're going, I don't know what to do about this. Oh my, oh my. Oh, how am I going to get out of this? Oh my, right? And I love that picture. When he first told me that, you don't try to fix the problem in the rocking chair. You get your butt up. You get up and go do something completely different. I just think this is awesome. Which comes in now, this concept here of structural tension.
So there is a difference between conflict and tension.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. So we're not trying to change the structure of the conflict.
What
Right.
you're trying to do right here is you're trying to be aware of where this is happening in your life. This is a reality. And so just like the rocking chair, you're not trying to fix this. You're going to get up and go someplace altogether different. Okay? And so that's what I want to show you here. This is called structural tension. And bear with me because this is the first time I've tried to talk about this out loud. I can see it in my spirit, but I don't necessarily have it out loud for you yet. But the picture that Chuck, please feel free to jump in here.
Can I jump in? Do you want
Yeah, because let me tell you, I'm going to give you my picture, and then you come in and fill in all the back of it, okay? Because structural tension is, here is where we're going. This is what we're aiming after. One goal, one heart, one source, whatever that thing is, you know? And then this is you. And now this is a rubber band. You're tethered up here. So instead of this rocking back and forth, it's pulling you toward the goal. And what I got when Chuck told me about this is I can talk about my behavior, wham, 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 I need to, I should, I ought, shame on me, blah, 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 blah. Or I can get up and go, okay, just forget that. And I can fix my eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of my faith, the author, the originator, and the perfecter, bringing to completion in all the days in between author and perfecter of my faith. Faith being me knowing him for who he is and who he wants to be for me in my life right now, the author and the perfecter of my faith in him, my sufficiency. I can put my eyes on him, and now instead of having this rubber band is pulling me toward him because he's the goal. So I don't have to be worried about going too far away because I've got my eyes on him. And every time I swing, I'm just going up farther and farther, like a bungee cord, right? Because you may pull away, but you're still just going right back up toward him because you've got the goal that you're set. Now you come fill in because I know that there's other pieces of this that I've missed. So
Okay.
come on up.
Do you need a Sharpie?
I'll probably grab one. Does anybody have any questions right now?
So does getting it vertical require snipping one of those? Like, I realize it's a completely different thing, but like...
That's a great question.
Okay.
So this center point right here, we might call equilibrium if I can spell it, right?
Yeah.
This system wants to get to equilibrium. So as soon as this person's pulled over here, then the tension gets created and it pulls somebody back to the middle because that's the system is trying to resolve. So if you think about making use of structural tension, like think about being thirsty, okay? So this part might be, we'll call it satisfied. This is me satisfied. This is me thirsty. And so in the middle of it, the tension that's created that already exists, that system going to equilibrium is an action is taken, and I take a drink, and the system itself is satisfied because that's what the system is designed to do. Make sense?
Sure.
So part of this is thinking through where am I really right now, getting a clear picture, like in considering my relationship with the Lord. Where does my relationship with the Lord or things in my life, where does it look like this? And trying to get a good sense of where I am today and where I want to be so that I'm crystal clear on the goal. Because then, once I'm crystal clear on both ends of that, then my body, my soul, my spirit, all of me will begin to work on actions that will pull me up. I can take an action, I can correct, and I can keep moving up. So that's to break this or dismantle it is essentially a structural change, not solving a problem, where I'm looking at both sides of this and then allowing myself to course correct as I'm going. I want to draw closer to the Lord. Oh, it looks like worship. Oh, wow, what I'm learning about worship is changing as I'm progressing. What I'm learning about walking with God is changing as I develop a history with Him and I gain more experience with Him. And this picture keeps getting clearer for me up here. And as I advance, I learn and I grow, and I'm continuing to move up this path.
And it's not always easy.
No.
Awesome, thank you, Ben.
Oh, and also, just one thing to be fair, that's Stephen Covey's material.
Yeah, what's the name of the book?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Robert Fritz. This is a guy named Robert Fritz called The Path of Least Resistance.
Path of Least Resistance.
The High Trust, Speed of Trust, that stuff is a book called Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey, the son, not Stephen Covey, the dad that just passed away.
Okay, questions, clarifications, et cetera, Are y'all awake? Does this make a difference to you? Can you connect any dots here? No?
Not yet, but I
Yeah.
probably will.
I don't know if this is like the same thing, but, you know, since this whole disaster has happened in my life, you know, I knew that God was working on the inside, so this is kind of embarrassing. I have always judged people, always, because I felt like from the time I was younger, you know, people were judging me, and 9 times out of 10 they were. So, like I said, there was a reason I was supposed to be here tonight, but last week a friend of mine posted a picture of her 6-year-old son on Facebook, and for his spiritual birthday, he went and got both of his ears pierced. Well, the mother in me was like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with her? Are you kidding me? Does she not? I know she reads the Bible. That's a sign of slavery. And all of a sudden, like, God spoke to me and said, don't judge her. And I was like, are you kidding? I know you know it's in the Bible. And then God showed me, you know, that you could be a slave to Christianity. But He wanted me to call her. Like, He said, you need to speak to her. And I was like, I'm not talking to her. I'm sorry. You know, I'm not going to do that. She doesn't know that I said that. You know, I said it in my home. So I let it go. And, like, the next day I was reading and, like, the verse, you know, judge not lest you should be judged. And I heard God say, you really need to call. And I was like, listen, she wasn't in here. Nobody has to know. You know, it's all good. I'm sorry for what I said. 2 days later, there was a thing from Joyce Myers that said, you know, before you know, look at other people's faults, you should look at yourself. Well, I hardly ever repost stuff, but I repost that, and she was the first one that commented on it and said, very true. Well, I mean, God said, you need to call her, so I called her, and I had to say, you know, I know you don't know this, but I have to tell you this. You know, I judged you, and I'm sorry. And that was huge for me. So that was Friday. So when we went to Biltmore Saturday, you know, first day of Christmas season, tons of people around, and like people are getting off of buses, and I'm going, oh, I'm not even going to go there. And like people just kept walking by me, and I was like, oh, I'm not even going to go there. And like, I don't know if that's the same thing, but to me that's huge because, you know, even today I had an incident with my neighbor, and I came home and Eric said something. I was like, don't judge. So
Good, yeah. He's recreating a new path for the water to go down. I got it.
Lord help us.
No, I
Can
love it.
you maybe talk about the difference between staying in that yo-yo place where you're going, I'm trying to do better, I'm trying to go against the grain, and it's still yo-yo, and truly blowing something up to where it goes forward consistently? I'm
It
not
comes
sure
back.
that
It comes back to identity.
Yeah.
Okay,
It
could
totally
you
comes
expand
back
on
to, but it totally comes back to who am I really? Like in the top one, the structural conflict. If blue is me working out and red is me eating my desire to eat ice cream, it comes back to stopping and saying, functionally, I'm healthy and athletic. It's who I am, and redefining it. And I might not be there today, or in terms of where I was in my marriage, stopping and saying, I'm faithful. And then all the structures began to change in my life when I said, faithful is the goal, and I see the distance, I see where I am at today, and then all the structures could change in my life when I became crystal clear about who I was and who God was calling me to be.
Okay, that's a key element in that whole understanding between the two. Thank you.
I don't see how, I'm sorry, I'm missing something in the middle of those two things. You're saying it's your identity.
This is your identity.
So I have a crappy marriage, right? But I don't want to forgive. So let's start there. So I'm saying my equilibrium is, I believe God wants me to have a good marriage. Right?
You're trying to get
That's
off-
my identity.
Yeah, over here.
Okay.
See, when you're trying to correct this, you're kind of, it's frustrating.
That can't be corrected.
Not really.
Right.
So this
That's
is,
like the rocking chair.
This is the
they
rocking
don't
chair.
belong together.
They don't belong together.
Okay.
You step
You have
out
to-
of the rocking chair,
Got it.
get in the car, and go someplace altogether
like-
different.
Before and after.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so like knowing what makes the before and after difference is identity, like having an identity crisis.
Like, here in your behavior, there's a question that you're trying to answer. It's like if there's this, which one am I going to do? Which one am I going to do? And so we find this whole tension back and forth. But this over here is a goal. We're trying to increase in a knowledge that's been given, especially as you're a believer. If you're walking in your identity, if you lay this stuff down and you go, my sole goal is to walk in the love of God, I guarantee you every single one of these things are going to get in place. Because the love of God is your identity. It's your DNA. It's what you were made for. It answers every single thing that you were looking for. And so if this is what we're just moving toward this goal. And there's no wishy-washiness here, right? We're not trying to go, oh, well, maybe I'm not about the love of God. No, this is the goal. And everything that we're doing is structurally going back up. It's going toward this direction. It's a totally different, it's a different quest. This is like, almost to me, like a flight.
It seems like to me that this side is control
Mm-hmm.
and this side is surrender.
Mm-hmm. With a purpose.
Right.
Right? A surrender with a purpose. It's like a very structured plan. I mean, I think about how, like in my own life and beauty issues, that I was going, am I not? If I did this, and then the Lord goes, let's just agree that you are. Let's just work on you agreeing with me that you are. And then all this other stuff started changing, and this stuff fell away. These questions started falling away altogether. Because we started just working on, this is what I said. Well, you just work toward believing what I said. And so you can put this over, I mean, I think if you would begin with who your identity is, that song, calling out deep, stirring up deep, deep wells, deep, deep waters, we're going to dance in the river. There is an identity that is ours for the having, but you have to take it. So when you're walking in the identity of God, what I see is people put identity issues and all their pissing and moaning over here, and they can't figure out why they're not growing in their life with God. Amen? Because they want to keep all this arguing, but in their heart of hearts, they know that He's the answer. So I'm going, just stop the arguing, and just keep moving towards your identity. And I don't even know my experience. I would let the marriage, the food, I'd let that all fall to the side, and I would only work on my identity. And I think that those other things will line up. Because I see people running after this when they don't know who they are in God, and they can't figure out why they're frustrated.
Amen.
Boom.
Amen to that.
Because these things don't satisfy. They don't. They can't. They weren't supposed to. And so it's like, no wonder we feel such tension and conflict. It was never supposed to. And I want to say this. Even trying to be a good Christian is not your identity. Because nowhere in the Bible does it talk about being a good Christian. It talks about being a well-loved child, holy beloved, spotless, blameless, chosen. That's your identity. So like you don't settle for anything else but well-loved child. 100% favor of God.
So what about if you're, I'm sorry, but you don't want to ask it.
No.
That conflict is an external, a person. There's a,
You can't control the other person.
no, but it's part of my stupid conflict. My rubber band going back and forth.
Is the conflict the person or what the person's pulling?
There's just all constant conflict. I cannot control that person, and I know that. So, but there's a constant conflict. And you just said, I laid down all that and just focused on my identity. So,
Do you think there's a time where we have to walk away from some relationships for our health and well-being? I'm not talking about a covenant relationship. I'm talking about maybe a friendship or even a relative.
I would say yes on all of the above, even covenant relationships. Because when I finally got out of the way, God could talk to me and God could talk to Chuck. And I don't mean giving up on the marriage, because I wasn't giving up on the marriage, but I had to let him go.
People have to make their own choices.
And I didn't want him to do what he was doing. I mean, like, I had such compassion for you. It's like, I mean, and understand, like, our story is God had told me, you cannot get divorced, and I'm going to deliver Chuck. And then I'm sitting here in this mess for years of him going, I'm not changing a thing. And I'm going, oh, yes, you are. I mean, I really did have that posture. Oh, yes, you are, because God's going to deliver you. And he's like going, oh, yeah, watch this. I mean, that was his posture. I mean, I love you. No disrespect to you. But, I mean, it was just bad.
Yeah, but can I say something here?
Sure.
Is that when I look back on those years, I think about the way I watched you growing in terms of connection, intimacy, relationship with Jesus, and I kept looking over and saying there's something more than me walking in this structural conflict of saying I want to be righteous and holy and pure and I want porn and ping-ponging back and forth and looking over at you working on the left side of the board, going from thirsty to satisfied in Jesus and continuing to grow in this way. And over time, I would argue that what you said earlier in the evening is still true, that if you will stop and work on identity, that will be the answer. And that you're right, you can't control somebody else responding to it, but what have you got to lose if you could work on identity, become so sold out and wholly given over to Jesus that your life would be radically transformed, that you would bless instead of cursing, or whatever the ultimate, how it would push out in the rest of your life, then if the guy stayed stuck, your life would still be phenomenally better. So, I don't know, that worked for us.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus. Yeah, thanks, man.
that in itself is a structural conflict.
What is?
Nothing.
Yeah. That you would change, that you would give over to change and go, I can't change the other person.
That creates the most tension. The utmost tension.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not your intention to have to, I mean, you feel it, right? But it's not your heart issue there.
We're only responsible for our heart before the Lord. And I can tell you many times that I have prayed, and I'm sure that Chuck has done the same, are you going to do something about them? You know, I've sat with the Lord, am I good? You got anything you want to correct? I will try my best to correct. And I have persisted in things that I have done that have been harmful to him, thinking he deserved it, that kind of stuff. The Lord's going, that is not what I said. I mean, what he's doing, I don't care what he's doing, that is not what I said. So there's like this continual moving into identity about who I am. And I'm not there yet. I mean, I just had a huge argument with Salem tonight. I mean, I don't want you to get, I'm not there yet, okay? But there's a way that, there's a transformation. Don't miss the transformation. Don't miss that whatever, here's my thought. Whatever it is that this tension is caused about, the Lord wants to heal it. And he can only heal it when you're working on the right end of the problem in the right direction. So if you have anger issues or rejection issues or, you know, name them, there are 1,000 of them, that's not who you are. And so he's trying to strip off all that stuff so that you can just see from him who you really are. And he's going to use the circumstance that you're in right now. I mean, you know, some of you have young children. Tia's not married yet. you've got a young child, you don't have children, you've got several children. It means like our stories are all different, right? So the Lord's going to work in the circumstances where we are to get our attention to work on our identity. Did you have something I saw you wave?
Yeah, I just thinking about, Heather, let's say that there's let's just take a business, for example. So a business has all these variables. They've got employees that have crappy morale and products that some people like and some people hate, and they're functioning as a company in the middle of that oscillation and structural conflict. And then one day they stop and they go, you know what? This is who we really want to be. This is where we are now. Let's work on our identity. And they keep singing the same goal over and over. And we see companies transform and actually make something happen as people get on board and they begin to believe the mission and they begin to believe who they really could be, right? And there's something about somebody saying, I'm going to be relentless about pursuing God, and I don't care. And I'm not saying that to be harsh to you, but just I don't care what's going to stand in my way. I'm going fully after God. And if a company were to move from the right side of the board to the left, we know that they would face shipping delays, things that got screwed up, their primary supplier bailing on them and saying, I'm sorry, we can't give this to you anymore. So even on the left side, there would still be things that would have to be accomplished to complete on the goal, right? So maybe husband staying stuck is one of the all things working for good to drive identity and who you really are on the left side, and that's something working in it as you overcome it, that you continue to be strengthened in it. Does that?
I'm tracking right along with you. It just seems like it's a really shitty way to do it.
I mean, for me, I
Because
think
you're
I would
creating
rather,
like the worst case scenario, and that's just, I got it. More God, more God, more God. He is it. That's it. I'm only dependent on Him. But it makes life down here really crappy for a long time.
A season.
Yeah.
A season.
A season.
If the structural conflict wasn't like that, I wonder if we would really speak together
Right.
to begin with.
So you have to be good and miserable, right? Before you go, this is not working, right? This is not working.
to me, it's just much easier to fix and control somebody else
Is it? I haven't found that to be true, actually.
than it is, or at least try to.
That's
So
not
I don't
true.
have to deal with myself.
That's not true.
I also think that there's like,
Insanity.
there's not even just like one, I think there's like, in many people, there's not just one. There's like a
Yeah,
bunch. Like with
right.
me personally, I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh yeah, I got you, girl, I got you. I'm like, yeah, I got all of them. I didn't have to write them down. I was writing them before you even put them up there. Like, yeah, I got all kinds of crap. But yeah, I think that like, all of those things, even when you let go of both sides and this equilibrium isn't all that cool either. Because you're like, So I think maybe, getting from there to there, I'm still, kind of adjusting to that. I get it though, to like just to change the control. Like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this way. I'd rather go this way than this way. Because I think you have to certainly get to a point where there's just nothing else. Like not, maybe just one more chance or anything like that. Get a little emotional, sorry.
It's all right, no problem.
Well, and the whole point about behavior and identity is very important because I behave out of a false identity.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You all should write that down.
So,
This stuff here is because you're behaving out of a false identity. I just was listening to a speaker this morning, and just watching, he was talking about one of my favorite verses, the tongue has the power of life and death. And he just was nailing that. And he was talking about let no corrupt thing come out of your mouth. And he said again, let no corrupt thing come out of your mouth. He said criticism, complaining, and gossiping come straight from the pit of hell. They come from no other place. And so he said again, criticism, complaining, gossiping, they come straight out of the pit of hell. He said, so when you catch yourself complaining and criticizing and gossiping, he goes, you're not speaking the life of God over other people. And I just went, dang. You know what I mean? I was just reeling. So see, that's identity. That guy is so solid in his identity, he don't have time for this. Oh, maybe it's okay if I talk like this. Oh, maybe it's okay. He's like going, I'm about life. His identity is, I'm about speaking life, the life of God over people that I see and meet, whether I know them or not. So he is constantly now practicing how to get in these situations and do that. He was in this crazy thing. He went into some spiritual shop and started healing these two people, and a Wiccan was in the building because she owned this shop. And she's like going, don't touch me and don't talk to me, but don't touch me. Because she knew who he was. I mean, they're not stupid, right? She's going, I need you to get out of it. And she goes, just don't touch me and don't talk to me. And he said she wouldn't even look him in the eye, just like, because she knew.
Oh.
Wow.
Because she knew the presence of God was in her place. So she just said, you're going to have to go out, and she just kind of went around him and things. Because he's about life. He didn't have to go up and say, I'm a Christian. The presence of God was on him. Yes, Anna.
David Jeremiah said one time that we should only say things that are kind, needed, and true in that order, and all three need to be present. Like,
Yeah, got it. Yes.
So be careful here in the sense that it's easy to confuse sort of primary things in my identity and secondary things. Like if I use on my iPhone MyFitnessPal to start tracking my weight, tracking my workout, those kinds of things, that's a secondary thing. That's a tool that I can use once I've settled on my identity is I'm healthy. Right? So
Yeah,
I can really get twisted around with I'm going to read my Bible, I'm going to pray, I'm going to worship, I'm going to bless and not curse, and I'm all of a sudden creating this whole legal structure that my structural conflict remains, and I bounce back and forth, just like what we've modeled. It's more, I'm going to sit in the fact that he says, holy, blameless, free from accusation, I'm a daughter, my beauty overwhelms the king. That's who I really am. I'm going to sit in that, and I'm going to let all the secondary stuff come in its time and come in its place. But I'm not going to be run by shame and performance by grabbing to the secondary things around identity instead of sitting in the primary.
Amen. Amen. Which is kind of interesting. I had a question about what I said. You want to talk about I got to teach Berean this weekend. It's like your guardrails in your life is God's perfect love on this side and the peace of God on this side. Not the peace of the world, because it's different. And so you have all kinds of room in here. If this is a road, you can, all kinds of room. But these are guardrails to help you stay on this path, of just going in toward greater awareness of who God is. And that works. I'm telling you, I've been testing that, and that works. If I don't feel dearly loved, then I'm going, where did I go? Because he didn't go anywhere. If I don't feel the peace of God, then what's in my craw? Who's made me mad? What am I afraid of? What's going on? Where do I need to step back in? Okay, yeah, here I am. Here's that sweet spot. There is a sweet spot. There's a spiritual sweet spot that is part of your identity, and you want to just stick and stay in that. And you want to become spiritually awake so that you can tell what's going on. We get so pulled around. So the Lord just gave this to Chuck, and I just think it's beautiful. So I just want to give it to you. What do you call these?
Matrix.
Matrix.
Decision matrix.
Like I don't even, yeah. But I thought it was just fun. So people often talk about that we have such performance babies, especially in WGR. We have such legalism and such in the church of performance, trying to get stuff right. But we sometimes get to such a point of grace that we think that there's no response. And we spent a couple of weeks talking about what does it mean to respond to God when Jesus said, pick up your mat and walk. He expects you to get up and walk and do something to respond. So when there is, I don't know if you've ever seen these matrices, on one side is abundance, the abundant life that is ours in Christ, and that obedience that we offer to Him as out of an act of love. Okay? So when there is low abundance and there's low obedience, we call that Christian lostness. You say that you're a Christian, but there's no favor and abundance of God, and there's no obedience in responding to God to actually see any kind of growth, any real growth of the spirit life at all. So just the spirit lostness, the Christian lostness. When you have abundance, low abundance, and you have high obedience, then you have legalism.
Hold on, how can you have low abundance? How can you have
If
low
you're not,
abundance?
I know people who live in low abundance all the time.
It's like poverty if you go.
Like
People
a poverty
that-
mentality, scraps from the table.
People
God's
that
gonna
keep
find-
all the rules, but they're nasty and they're bitter and they're unkind and they have no
You don't
joy.
mean the abundance of Jesus, of
Yeah.
100% favor of God.
They have it, but they've not received it.
You're not walking in.
I know a ton of people who God has equally given to all His favor and abundance. I know a fraction who've actually tapped into it. So that's what we were talking about. It's available, but not automatic. Okay? So Christian lostness, then you have people who really focus a lot on obedience, but they don't focus on the abundance of God. And so you come up with all kinds of legalism. And you all have church backgrounds, you know this. Obey the rules, obey the rules, obey the rules. It's all about you've got to do it the way God says it. But they have no sense of the goodness of God and the favor and the extravagance and the crazy antics that He does. So then if you have high abundance, the favor of God loves, He's crazy about me, and you have low obedience, you got somebody that thinks they can do whatever they want. Oh, Jesus loved me, I can get away with anything. Even a parent would say that that's an unruly child, right? Because we want our children to walk in wisdom. Whose wisdom? God's wisdom. And we walk as His child, and God has a way He wants His children to walk in the world. So you know this in your own home. So you may have high abundance, but low sense of obedience, so you think you can do anything you want anytime and call it grace. That's not wise. That's not God's wisdom. And here's the sweet spot. High abundance, high obedience. And that looks like devotion. This only comes by devotion. It comes by just going, I'm just crazy about you and you're crazy about me. I'll do whatever you want. I may not get it right every single time, but as I grow in devotion, the abundance and the obedience continues to express itself out. I don't
The other
know
word
if
there
this-
would be freedom.
Yeah. Here?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I love that. Because it's so sweet, the freedom He gives. Freedom reigns in this place. Does this do math for you, that obedience and abundance could produce freedom? Does that do math for you? Can you see that math?
Yeah.
Can y'all see that? We don't teach this. But this is where freedom lies. That you're so safe in the arms of God, of course I'll do whatever you want. I mean, I'm telling you, if you've ever had like a really steamy embrace, and somebody's holding you, and they whisper, will you, and you're going, I'm whipped, I'll do anything I want to do. Sure. Y'all know that? That's what I'm talking about with Jesus. There's just that freedom going, God, do anything you ask me. Do I have to do it right now? Let's just do it, you know? It's just like that kind of just whipped kind of, whew, sure. So just have that to put in your pocket, not to judge other people, but to just be and monitor your own life. Because we all, if we're not careful, would bounce in and out of any of these boxes. So when we're breaking, while we're breaking, as you go to the holidays, okay, scratch that. Let's have a different question. Is there anything that God has shown you this semester? I know a couple of you have only been here a couple of times, and it's okay. Is there anything that God has shown you in this semester that will help you carry through the next semester? I'm trying to think about ways that God has shown Himself to you in intimacy or revelation is new in the last 2-3 months. In this class or not, I don't care, just a fresh revelation that you've had from the Lord that you'd be willing to share with other people so that we can all get a piece of that. Anybody got anything?
He's been talking to me lately about how being fully satisfied requires being fully vulnerable.
Being fully satisfied requires being fully vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Like if if I'm really going to enjoy the all of him and the dreams that he's planted, I have to be willing to be vulnerable and let my guard down and risk. And he's been talking specifically about dreams of my heart. He's going, when I plant a dream, you have to be vulnerable. When I birth a dream, you're going to have to be vulnerable. You can't. Anyway, I don't know, that's been one of our conversations lately.
When you plant a dream, it has to be vulnerable. When you birth a dream, it has to be vulnerable.
I mean, he's like giving me the picture of like when you're intimate with me and I plant a dream and you like having a baby, you've got to be really vulnerable and open to me. But I put it in and I'm going to bring it out. And like when you birth something, it can be messy and you still have to be vulnerable, but it's worth it because only in those places are you going to know the full satisfaction of what it is that he wants to give you in that intimacy with him and what that dream is that he's planting and birthing.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Cool.
Of course, being the vulnerable part, that's not so awesome. I mean, it will be there. We're working on it, you know?
Yeah, it depends on how bad you're in labor, because then you just don't care. Hey, man, you're like, oh, okay, fine, take it. Okay, fine. That's good. Okay, anybody else?
Mine's similar to hers. I had a situation happen with a friend a couple of weeks back, and started having really vivid dreams of past things that happened when I was a kid, with friendships, families walking away from our family. And I really didn't know what to do with it. I was just like at a loss. I was like, why? It was like 3 very vivid dreams, and like waking up crying in my sleep because these people were just disappeared. And that's what happened in that friendship. This person just walked away, and I don't know that it was necessarily much them as my withdrawal. And just sitting in that, and the vulnerability part is walking through the hurt. When you're hurt with someone hurts you or you hurt that person, to not walk away from it, but to walk into it and see the relationship healed. And I'm 2 friends, I mean, after I walked through that with the Lord, 2 friends that I haven't had contact with in a very long time called me and asked if we could get together, and it was just confirmation from the Lord, and I needed that.
Amen. Did you write the dreams down?
They're in my memory, but yeah, I do need to journal them out.
You need to journal, because sometimes even in the journaling he brings back things that you had forgotten, and that's very cool.
And I've never had, I mean, I have not been aware to this point in my life what dreams mean, but those were very specific to what I was going through at that time in my life. So I knew that it was connected.
Yeah, he's absolutely God of dreams. Who else has God talks in dreams? Yeah, like half the class. Yeah, that's so important. However, last night I dreamed about Lady Gaga, and I don't like, how weird is that? I actually need to take that back.
You were supposed to dress up for class
So, God, sorry. She's something else. She needs Jesus.
When you did early in the year, when you did the elements and we did Lord's Supper together, and you talked through the bread and the fullness of the different components of the bread and the oil and the water, you know, and then how you took the wine and broke that out, that completely blew open my view of the Lord's Supper. That was really a powerful time. Not just from a teaching, like, cool, take in new content, but really like one of those things where you alter it. And now I just looked at the Lord differently. I just looked at His redemption of everything and how intense and purposeful and beautiful He is. So it was a really powerful night.
That was a cool outpouring. That was cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. I never had looked at that myself.
The mud on the ice thing was, even though I did it wrong, was really powerful.
You didn't do it wrong. You just did it Laura style. You know, that was interesting. I had a friend who came to that class and she said she couldn't bring herself to look in the mirror. And so I just thought that was interesting. Because it's that fact of her not being able to look in the mirror started up all kinds of conversations with the Lord. And so that was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're saying for you that exercise was good for you.
It was good for me, and I mean, the Lord just, I don't even remember what the exercise was supposed to say. I don't remember what it was to me. And he was just going, what did he say? It was something about, like, you're all in. I love how you jumped all in, but you're acting all busy. Because where I was at that particular moment, you know, my heart was there, but I was so scrambling with just the rest of the busyness in my life. And he's going, let's wash that part off, you know. So it's really good.
That's cool. That's very cool. Anybody else?
All right.
All right.
I feel like, first of all, the Azer thing was kick-ass. And I can't even, like, I have those papers sitting on my desk, and I look at them, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get there. So it was like a seed that was planted that was really cool. I can't unpack all that right now, but that was really awesome for somebody that's never heard any of that before. I guess it goes in with that identity.
It does. It's huge.
Not guess, but I know. I think the Lord has really been working on me in relationships, and something that I've just recently that He has said is you guys, or I've heard people call them life verses or whatever. It's those verses that, for me, it's something that God gave me when I was a child that He always, it's amazing how He gives you something when you are a child that you just think is really cool, but brings you back to Him and as an adult, and then He builds on that in your life, and it's really cool. But two things is waiting, which I suck at waiting. I'm so impatient. And that verse is in Isaiah, you know, those who wait on the Lord, their strength will be renewed. And I feel wiped out all the time because I don't wait, and then I don't hope. I've heard another version of that is those who hope in the Lord. And so just Him teaching me how to wait on things. That's hard. Waiting on dreams and visions, waiting on, you know, where we're going, waiting on losing friendships, and knowing that they will come back around. How sweet that is that they do come back around. I'm still waiting on my marriage, but I'm hoping that strength. And then just how to be quiet. I don't know if y'all know me, but I like to talk. and just learning how to, in those situations, learning how to be quiet and not an ice out, not but okay, I'm going to wait and I'm going to be quiet, because you could do one and not the other. You know what I'm saying? So those have been, and just being in this class and being on Wednesday night with Jeremy and knowing hope and waiting, it's so perfect that those two things go together, you know, and so it's so perfect that He shows us that there is the hope and that He's with us in the waiting. And so I feel like this whole semester has just been a lot of sensory and, you know, do you know all of this about Him, and do you know what there's more to get of Him, and just like, oh my gosh, instead of digging yourself down into I'm a POS, being like looking up and going, there's more, and I don't have to have it right this second. It's going to come, and the journey is going to be, I mean, I do have it the second, meaning God, but all that stuff doesn't have to happen right now, and that it's going to be amazing in the process.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the process, that's what it is.
Amen. Yeah. Well, that's been my lesson for this semester. Like, process.
Yeah.
Because the Lord has been going, I have not changed my word at all. I have not deviated one bit. And the process will go like this, but we are still moving toward my word. And so I'm like going, okay.
Process, outcome, identity, destiny.
Yeah, man. I mean, that was good for me. I mean, I needed that.
We watched you grow in that as you
Good
went over
Lord.
it.
He just keeps stretching that tarp out. Goodness. So, yeah. Anybody else?
Hey, I know that I haven't really been here for the class of the semester, but obviously there was a reason why I came tonight. Big time. But two things, in the whole mess of everything that's going on with me, you know, I've been taken out of one situation and put into another, which is a lot healthier. And for me, I've had to ask God, you know, why would, you know, was this a good decision? Oh my gosh, can't believe I did this. Can't believe, you know, what am I going to do? And for me, I have to be like hit in the face with things. And so for me to see it in front of my face, it has to be right there. And it's gone from me finding things out about that situation that made me really mad to things like just the other day that, you know, my sister and I could laugh about. Like, are you kidding me? Really? Like, it's changed, you know? I mean, instead of this where it's like, I cannot believe this, you know, really mad and hurt, to being like, come on now. And I think that that's changing, and I think that that's good.
Yeah.
I really do. Also, I got my first heart. I think since I met you, I was like, why does she always get hearts? And I don't find any. And I got my first one in the weirdest freaking place ever.
It's not weird. It's not weird.
It's not weird. It's sweet. I've got a picture of it. So we were making Brenner breakfast for dinner, if you guys don't know. And
Brenner rocks.
oh, my phone. Oh, it's at home. Crap. But so we were making breakfast for dinner, and I was cooking. And so I had the bacon, I had the sausage, I had the eggs, and I'm making all this stuff, and kids are all around, and Heather's in the living room, and I'm like, holy cow. I was like, Heather, she goes, I don't want to get up, just take a picture of it. I was like,
Which is why you were making dinner.
which is why I was making dinner,
Which is
exactly.
perfect.
Which was totally perfect. So I'm like, oh my God, so I took a picture of it. And come over to her. In my big pan of sausages, I flipped over a sausage, and it was this big heart.
I love it.
It was a heart-shaped sausage. Are you kidding me? It was so awesome. I'm just sitting there laughing. And it was just the first one. I haven't gotten any, and was like, God, that's awesome. You know, I think that that's probably all connected too.
It is so connected.
And I think that that was really great. And then nobody ate it. I got to eat it.
I didn't. I picked it up 3 times. I was like, oh, no, that's the heart sausage.
No.
But you gotta understand, they love sausage. Like her daughter.
We're kind of sausage freaks. Kind of.
That's how
That's all right.
perfect.
That's all
So it was really perfect that, like, of everything that I was making, it was
Everything in
a
that.
pan. And you can actually see some of the other ones. None of them, you know, look like that. I flip over the very first one, and it's a heart-shaped sausage. Which is pretty neat. Like I said, ever since I first met you, I'm like, you've got entire slideshows of heart-shaped sausage.
That's ridiculous.
You've got like a small encyclopedia of like, well, this time I was just walking through the park.
It's actually almost good. It's almost good.
But
I'll take it. No, good. Then you'll see more. I promise. Once the
Pretty
dam
awesome.
has been breached, it's like it's gonna come. Amen.
It's pretty awesome.
That's awesome. I love
You
it.
need to write up a heart encyclopedia. Just pictures of all the little products. You could do a children's book with all those. Like even just like a little one with like different hearts.
That's good. I like that. So fun. Okay. Anybody else? I don't want to have to feel late. Anybody? Anything you're best to share?